This is WFYI News Now. It's October 10th, and I'm your host, Abriana Herron. On today's show, a new report shows that a 20-year-old worker has a 1 in 4 chance of experiencing a significant disabling condition before retiring. What's at stake in the school board election at Hamilton Southeastern? And it's the first time in nearly 30 years that an incumbent isn't running for the District 39 State House seat. How will this play out in the November elections?
So you have generally high educational attainment, high socioeconomic status, and the parties see this kind of as the breeding ground for the Democrats to flip things and for the Republicans, I think, to test out ideas.
Those stories are coming up. But first, the leader of one of Indianapolis's largest charter schools was suspended for 2 weeks without pay this spring after the school board learned of a shocking email he sent 2 years ago. From WFYI's education desk, Dylan Pierce-McCoy reports on what was in the email and what the school did.
Ryan Gall is executive director of Victory College Prep. He sent the email back in 2022 to people going on a personal camping trip that included school employees. Gall made multiple sexually explicit comments in the email. Daniel Grunman is a senior lecturer at Indiana University. He says that how leaders behave in their private lives can shape the culture and perception of an organization.
Whether we like it or not, those two lives aren't really completely separate.
The board of Victory College Prep learned about the email from an anonymous complaint in the spring. Lawyers investigated, and the board decided to give Gall a 2-week unpaid suspension and training. Gall told WFYI he is genuinely sorry. He remains executive director of the school. I'm Dylan Pierce-McCoy.
To read more about this story, visit our website at WFYI.org. A 20-year-old worker has a 1 in 4 chance of experiencing a significant disabling condition before retiring. That's according to a new report from the Indiana Community Action Poverty Institute. Indiana Public Broadcasting's Tamoria Cunningham reports on recommendations to support those with disabilities in the workplace and financially.
The recommendations come from 20 people who left the workforce due to a disability and include greater support for people with disabilities to stay in the workforce. Ashley Irby-Phillips with the Institute says people with disabilities often stop working due to lack of accommodations.
If employers really understood the implications of keeping individuals employed and helping them and assisting them, they could understand that also it benefits them too to keep individuals employed.
The report calls for more education for employees and employers about their rights and responsibilities under the Americans with Disabilities Act. Other recommendations include access to paid family and medical leave, streamlined services and resources, and other financial support. For Indiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Tamoria Cunningham.
A pool of 6 candidates made up of newcomers and incumbents have set their sights on 3 open Hamilton Southeastern School Board seats. From WFYI's education desk, Rachel Fredette reports on what's at stake in HSE's school board election.
A ballot of conservative candidates won 4 open board seats in 2022. That freshman board made decisions that stirred controversies in the community. This election, a trio of right-leaning candidates, John Stewart, Greg Lannon, and Terry Toll, are vying to build on that work. They are backed by a conservative group who supported the 2022 slate. School boards are intended to be nonpartisan, but communities like Fishers have moved closer to party affiliation since the pandemic. The remaining 3 candidates, Latricia Schooley, Sarah Parks-Reese, and Suzanne Thomas, are endorsed by the district's teachers union. Thomas is a self-described conservative. I'm Rachel Fredette.
WFYI and The Current in Fishers are hosting a forum for HSE candidates on October 10th. The event will be live streamed. And for our final story today, it's the first time in nearly 3 decades that an incumbent isn't running for the District 39 State House seat. That seat covers Hamilton County, an up-and-coming political battleground area. WFYI's Elizabeth Gabriel reports on some of the biggest issues in the Donut County.
Democrat Matt McNally and his family have lived in Hamilton County for 10 years. Lately, he's been door-knocking in Carmel neighborhoods to spread the word about his campaign for House District 39.
Hi, how are you? Is this the Collins residence? Hi, my name's Matt McNally, and I'm running for state representative.
McNally says he wants to make sure public schools receive enough funding, abortion and reproductive rights are protected, and wants more services for veterans.
I want to make sure that our schools are properly funded and we have the ability to hire the best teachers. Another concern of mine is
McNally also tells constituents that he wants to address housing issues so people who work in the area can afford to stay there. An essential worker will only have about $14,000 for the entire year after paying for housing and transportation. That's according to a 2022 housing study of Hamilton County. Later, the Democratic candidate began speaking with small business owner Doug Miller. Miller wants public schools to prepare students to join the workforce.
I think there are concerns around education and how we support education and how we develop educational programs that will develop people, but then the corollary to that is, how do we keep those kids here?
Yeah.
Right? We've got a brain drain out of the state. How do we deal with that?
Miller says he hadn't heard much about McNally before he knocked on his door, but now Miller says he'll probably vote for him. McNally, a retired military veteran of 22 years, is running for this seat for the second time. 2 years ago, he went up against incumbent Republican Jerry Torr. He lost by roughly 5 percentage points and hopes this time will be different. On the other side, Republican candidate Danny Lopez is banking on his years of political experience. He says his time as the special assistant to former Governor Mike Pence and other roles under the McDaniels administration make him the right man for the job.
People want to talk about public safety not just from are our streets safe, are our neighborhoods safe, which is obviously a concern, but then beyond that, do we have adequate supports for our police officers and our first responders? Because they grapple with incredible mental health challenges.
During the past 2 legislative sessions, lawmakers have introduced a bill that would have provided Indiana first responders with funds for mental health treatment, but the bill failed after its first reading. Lopez says he wants to address issues related to education, like more support for teachers. Stephanie Flitner is a volunteer for Lopez's campaign.
What I like about him is that he knows we can't just say we're going to cut property taxes or we're going to stop referendums or something like that, because in funding, it's sort of like an ecosystem, and everything you pull or touch is going to have a ripple effect across the whole pond.
Some voters on both sides worry that cultural wars will detract from local issues. Here's Laura Merrifield Wilson, an associate professor of political sciences at the University of Indianapolis.
A lot of times voters are inundated with political noise on immigration and issues of the economy that really our state legislature is less involved in, but making a distinction between what those state policies are, where the candidates stand on them, and who best aligns with them as a voter is especially important.
Many of the residents in Indiana's counties are Republican, like District 39, but Merrifield Wilson says things may change.
So you have generally high educational attainment, high socioeconomic status, and the parties see this kind of as the breeding ground for the Democrats to flip things, and for the Republicans, I think, to test out ideas.
The election is November 5th. I'm Elizabeth Gabriel.
Early in-person voting has started for voters at 9 satellite locations in Hamilton County. You can find who is on your ballot, more election coverage, and information on how to vote on our website at WFYI.org. That's all for today's episode of WFYI News Now. Our podcast is produced by Drew Daudelin with support from the news team at WFYI and public media journalists across the state. Our news director is Sarah Neal-Estes. Kendall Antron produced our music, and I'm your host, Abriana Herron. If you like today's episode, remember to subscribe and share, and follow WFYI on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube to check in on our newsroom throughout the day. Thanks for listening. We'll be back tomorrow.